Awesome. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. We'll be starting momentarily. Welcome. As you're joining us, if it's possible to write your name, what state you're joining us from, and whether or not you're a family child care educator, advocate, or friend, family, neighbor. We'd love to see who's here with us today. Welcome. So at this point, I would love to invite our interpreters to make the announcement on where our participants would be able to access the webinar, whether it is in Mandarin or in Spanish. So I invite you to join us off mute. Do we know if they went to their channels? Great. As a reminder that this is being recorded, and we will be providing the recording of the session after the webinar. is done with our NAFCC quarterly newsletter. So welcome. And we will also be sharing our presentation in both Chinese and Spanish. So we'll provide access to the presentation in your respective language via the chat. All right. I will go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. This is our third and final policy webinar of the year. And this has been extremely fun for me to be a part of with you all. Thank you for your feedback. Thank you for sharing your stories. Again, I just want to iterate that this is going to be recorded and we are going to share it, and we're going to share it and make it available in Spanish and in Mandarin. So this is going to be available to you all. We will also be streaming this webinar on our Facebook page. So it's also going to be made available there. And if you want access to it, please follow us on, make sure that you're subscribing to our newsletter, because we're going to make this available in our quarterly policy newsletter that's going to be circulated next week. So go to our website and make sure that you join our newsletter. Okay. If we can share the PowerPoint at this point. Thank you. So this is our Building on Family Child Care Momentum, Legislation and Actions Impacting Family Child Care. So it's a mouthful, but that is just a lot that's going on. Next slide, please. I am Yessie Robles Brown. I'm the Chief of Staff. I'm happy to be here with you all to talk a little bit about where we are in the state of family child care in the federal landscape, and really get to hear from our family child care educators as well. Just next slide, please. Just to really walk through our agenda. So we are going to be talking about child care in the federal arena. We will be talking about bills that are pertinent to family child care and the landscape overall. And yes, we'll talk a bit about CACFP. We heard you loud and clear last time that is a main issue as well. Federal appropriations, where are we? It's been 3 months since we last gathered together. So where are we right now? So we'll talk a bit about that, and the power of storytelling, continuing to enhance our voices in the field. So with that being said, next slide, please. Let's give a warm welcome back to Letty Medeiros, our NAFCC consultant, who is also joined by Whitney Pizek, the Director of Federal Child Care Policy at the National Women's Law Center. Whitney has led federal legislative strategy on work and family issues such as paid leave for the US and 023. Welcome. And next slide, please. I will let you all take it from here. Letty and Whitney, take it away.
Thank you so much, Yessie, and it's such a pleasure to be with you all this evening. As Yessie so beautifully introduced me, my name is Whitney Pizek. I'm the Director of Federal Child Care Policy at the National Women's Law Center. And although I don't have any children of my own, I was an early educator before taking on this role, and my mother as well worked her entire career in childcare. So this issue is near and dear to my heart, and I'm always just feel incredibly flattered and lucky to be able to spend time with early educators because I know how important the work is. So thank you. I'm happy to jump a bit into what you brought me here today to talk about. So I honestly, when I was asked to come speak today and talk about where we are federally for childcare and early learning, I know that things are bleak in many ways, But honestly, if you had told me in the spring that we would be in November with, or I'm sorry, December, with not only incredible congressional champions that are using their floor time, using their time at home, and using their time in DC to express their strong support for childcare and early learning, and their very intense attention to the fact that the American Rescue Plan cliff happened in September, that those very critical funds expired without any kind of congressional action. And that I know we're going to talk about this in a couple slides, but also that there's some exciting momentum behind the child nutrition program. I just think that even though we are still, I think, reeling from the loss of childcare being left out of Build Back Better, the fact that we are sitting here in December, right before the end of the year, with again these congressional champions as well as the White House standing with us, saying that we need at least $16 billion a year to stave off the worst impacts of the ARPA cliffs. And I know Letty's going to get more into this in a bit, but I think it just speaks so much to the people that are in this room right now and watching this webinar recorded later, that we would not be in this place right now with nearly all congressional Democrats and in the White House, using their bully pulpit and using their positions of power to say that not only, families need childcare, but that the workforce behind the childcare system also needs our investment and support. So I just am really, can't thank the people in this room enough, that it's because of your advocacy, because of you telling your stories, that we are in this position right now where we're still a few months off from winning, but that we are at a place where we have, I think, a deeper understanding of the critical need of investing in our work that I've never seen before. So anyway, so I kind of touched on this. The first bullet is the fact that the president has proposed $16 billion in emergency childcare funding to help address the American Rescue Plan cliff that happened in September, that had given such an important lifeline to so many childcare programs across the country. And not only that, but we've also seen a huge number of childcare bills introduced over this Congress. And I'll just plug that the Center for American Progress has a fantastic timeline that actually shows that the amount of bills introduced to try to invest in our childcare system has steadily increased over Congresses. Like, we are absolutely making our voices heard. Obviously not to the level that we need, but it is absolutely moving in the right direction. So I know that Yessi's put together this awesome slide, and I'm so glad this is going to be shared with everyone so that you can look up some of these bills later. But just to highlight a few now that are on the screen, there's one called the After Hours Child Care Act, which, as you all know, especially as family childcare providers, know that after hours and non-traditional care is absolutely critical. And so your voices have been heard, and that there are members of Congress, and this is a bipartisan bill, that recognizes that not only families but providers need resources and support in order to provide that after hours care. And then there's also the Expanding Childcare in Rural America Act, which we're hoping is going to be included in the Farm Bill, which has had its timeline increase. So that did not pass by the end of this year, but it's still in the works and still has a strong possibility of being included, because you have great champions like Senator Brown and Senator Wyden that really understand the critical role that childcare plays in rural America and for farm working families, and how that those providers and families need special attention from the federal government. Next slide, please. Here are a few more. There's the Building Childcare for a Better Future Act, which would increase funding. There's the Small Business Childcare Investment Act, which would support childcare providers by including them in the Small Business Investment Act. I think that is one of our biggest points that needs to be made when we're meeting with our policymakers, is the fact that you're small business owners, and no matter what party you're meeting with, nearly all policymakers make small business a huge part of what they advocate for. And I just think a lot of members of Congress, when I meet with them and I explain that when you're investing in childcare, and specifically family childcare, you are investing in women-owned, minority-owned, small businesses. And what better way to invest in our economy than the women that are the workforce behind the workforce? We all know that the families you serve would not be able to go to work if they did not have the assurance that their kids were in safe and loving environments, and that you're building the brains of our future workforce, and you're small business owners. I mean, I know I'm on my soapbox and I'm preaching to the choir, but I mean, really, they need to understand that y'all are small business owners, and that investing in childcare is truly part of what we all envision as the American dream. Next slide, please. So I heard before I was having my my prep call with Yessie, and I heard that a lot of you are really interested in the CSCFP legislation that has been put forward. And first, I just want to say that it's incredibly exciting that we have 3 bills that are recognizing that this is a problem that needs to be addressed, and has lots of co-sponsors. And so I hope that I'm going to go into a little bit more detail, but that is what you walk away with, because that just, again, shows that finally federal policymakers are starting to understand that childcare is often a main source of nutrition for not only the children, but oftentimes the adults and siblings that are served by family childcare providers, and that the 2-tiered system is incredibly burdensome and problematic, and really restricts the amount of family childcare providers that participate in the program. And so while I would say that it's, none of these bills are bad, that the Childcare Nutrition and Enhancement Act, so the Senate bill and the House bill that have the same name, I would say, it is a better use of your advocacy if you are going to contact your policymakers about these 3 bills. First, because it's introduced in both houses, so already you have a leg up compared to the Nutrition Improvement Act that is only in the House. And most importantly, I would say, for family childcare providers, that it's the one that addresses the tiering. The other bill, the Nutrition Improvement Act, does not address the tiering, which I know is most critical to those of you on the call right now. But I would not let that Improvement Act just completely fall off your radar if you're going to be, trying to galvanize the most amount of support as you can for the CACFP program, because if your member of Congress or your senator is on that bill, it does signal that they may be a good ally and worth reaching out to get on to the Enhancement Act, not the Improvement Act. I know these 2 bills have very similar names, but the one with the Enhancement Act is the one that I think that you want to see move more than the Improvement Act, again, because it has the tiering specifically called out that I know is most critical to family childcare providers. I hope that we have time for questions, but I'll happy to move to the next slide and turn it over to my colleague, Letty. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Whitney, for that awesome rundown of where we are in terms of so many bills. And, you know, in the Congress, when there's so many bills introduced on a topic, it is a sign that there is momentum on the issue, because it means that a lot of elected members and their staff are thinking about policies that deal with the issue. And I think we should take this as a good sign. I was not on video? Okay, hi, I'm on video. Okay, thank you. And these bills, you know, the potential for them to happen and become law, you know, maybe 50%, maybe less than 50, maybe 60. I believe the ones on nutrition, since there are 3 bills, maybe by the end of next year, by the end of this Congress, something could happen in that regard. In terms of family childcare, you know, the drive this year has been for funding. Funding, as Whitney mentioned, to ameliorate and improve the situation after the stabilization funds expired September 30. And we've been on this drive for $16 billion that we're grateful to the White House included it in the emergency request. And we've also been looking to increase the Child Care Development Block Grant funding in the regular appropriations bill that mostly on the Senate was published in July. And it had close to $1 billion increase for this year, this fiscal year. So there's 2 tracks that we've been very much following and advocating, and that is the emergency spending, the $16 billion, and the smaller increase on the annual appropriations process. Now, maybe I don't have to tell you, maybe you follow it closely, maybe you don't, but this Congress is one for the history books in terms of its dysfunction and in terms of its capacity to really pass important laws. The Senate has its own issues, but on appropriations, they've been able to get beyond some of the divisions and pass a lot of bills in the committee, meaning they haven't come to the floor, but they have put the bills together, and they have good increases that follow the budget agreement of June, which happened because of the debt default that did not come to happen because of the agreement. So that agreement set 2 levels of funding for 24 and for next year. But in the House, the Appropriations Committee is having some real difficulty because of leadership issues on getting their bills through. And in the end, yeah, let's help it. I agree with you. In the end, both House and Senate have to come together and agree on a number so that these legislation that funds all the federal departments, transportation, housing, health and human services, education, so all these departments can have their funding levels equal in the Senate and in the House. That has not happened. The House and Senate have not come together on this agreement yet. They were supposed to do that before September 30, but they haven't done it. And now they've pushed forward to keep the government open for 4 departments till January 19, for a set of other departments till February 2nd. Key question is, for our purposes, HHS, which is where childcare falls, it will be February 2nd. What will happen? You know, will the Congress finish its work on these appropriations bills or extend it again? We think they'll be extended again, and we'll be in this situation probably till April in terms of appropriations. On the supplemental, that we had such high hopes that excuse me, the $16 billion would be included. We found out last night that the $16 billion was not included in the supplemental request put forth by the Senate. They focused on Israel, Ukraine, China, Indo issues of security, and they left out the domestic request on childcare. Regardless, Today in the Senate, there was a vote and it did not pass the supplemental. Republicans opposed it because they are holding this big pot of money, which is about $106 billion without our childcare funding. They're holding it hostage to getting concessions on border security. So they're not related. These issues are not related, but Republicans do have a lot of leverage to demand these things because you need 60 votes and Democrats only have about 51 votes in the Senate. So in terms of childcare, there's a little bit of a standstill. We have been told by our allies in the Congress that even though the childcare $16 billion request is not in the supplemental that was unveiled, there might be an opportunity in the spring, before April, before May, where the domestic requests will be a pressure point again. Therefore, we need to keep at it. And I know that's always like what I hear. I've been working on this issue for 25, 26 years. And, you know, at moments like these where you get really close, but you come up empty, we always hear from our champions, and they do mean it. You got to keep at it. The advocacy has to continue. The pressure has to continue. And this institution of Congress really does respond to outside pressure. And if it's not today, it'll be tomorrow. We live to fight another day in terms of the 16 billion and in terms of the annual process. And I do think that we will have the opportunity in the next few months to, if we keep the pressure up, to get a sizable increase in childcare federally. I'm not really sure if it's going to be 16 billion. It might be 10, it might be 5 billion, but it'll be sort of like a connection to wherever we can be in the following year. So yes, keep the pressure up. And as we go into the holidays and we come to the Congress in the new year, I can tell you, you know, Whitney and I were at the Congress today in a big rally with our champions, that I sent an email to requesting them to participate in a press conference today on Monday, and they all said yes. We had Congresswoman Bonamici from Oregon, Mr. Castro from Texas, Sarah Jacobs from California. We had the leader, Hakeem Jeffries, on the Democratic side, come and speak. And the whip number 2 in the House for Democrats, Catherine Clark, and the appropriations ranking member who will be chair in the following Congress if there's a change in environment. And, you know, and unfortunately, these are all Democrats. How we wish that we could have at least one Republican come and join the press conference and fight for that childcare. But that's where we are right now. We have one side, one party that believes in this request. We have the White House, the administration that believes in the funding. But we need just a little more. We need Republicans, and we need more strength in the Senate across the board. So I will stop there. There's a lot more in terms of, you know, technical stuff that's going on with this budget that we could get into, but maybe we can tackle it during question and answer.
Thank you, Letty, for always providing such a comprehensive background and giving us really the inner workings of what's happening behind closed doors. Is often inaccessible to us. So these conversations are very much close to my heart. And we are able to advocate and we're able to push, right? Because your stories and the actions that are made within the fields matter and make the difference. And this is how it's made the difference. So I wanted to make sure that we provided space on what was done that made tangible change because of the continuous advocacy that you guys on the call and throughout the nation are able to continue to do. So you all make sure home-based family childcare remain represented whenever key decisions regarding childcare are made. And remember, by sharing your experiences through surveys, by providing testimonials, whether it is by showing up in Congress or in your state legislature, or writing and recording your personal stories, we are able to, as a coalition, to uplift your voices and really be able to connect what's happening tangibly on the field. So all that to say is thank you all on this call for continuously lifting your stories and letting us know what we need to advocate for. Next slide, please. So this past, for all of you who were able to attend the NAFCC annual conference last year, we conducted a survey, our NAFCC organizational health annual survey, where we had a response rate of 625 responses. So the survey consisted of 44 questions covering demographics, business management, customer service, and policy and advocacy. This is a good way for us, on top of all the other ways that we do, for us to gauge what the temperature in the room is, what is important for you all as family child care educators. And what we learned from you all who are providing home-based care, whether that's family child care educator and friends, family, and neighbor providers, we learned that earning life-sustaining wages is critical, right? And being able to adequately recruit and retain staff is also key and critical, because we're seeing programs close at an alarming rate. We know the compensation, we are advocating and continue to mention to push for compensation that is commensurate with the training, education, and accreditation that you all have. That is loud and clear. Next slide, please. You all also expressed that retirement is important. Being able to set yourself up is critical. And there's just not enough educators that are remaining, that are operational and have their programs open. And in states, what we're seeing is states are having longer wait lists. And we heard loud and clear through your testimonials that families are having to travel longer distances to find childcare. And when that's not possible, it's families having to go through lengths to figure out how they can provide care and be creative, or leave the workforce altogether. We heard from you all that access to subsidy program in your state is needed, and CACFP, right? Making sure that there's elimination in tiering. So all of this, again, we are able to gather and collect through the surveys, through data, even through the webinars where we are seeing in the chat and you guys are uplifting your voices on what's important. These are important ways and tools that we use on an overall wider level as to be able to feel the temperature in the room. And with that said, I also want to highlight some of the wins that we were able to have on a state level, from all of the advocacy that you've all made, and ways that we are able to continue to amplify your voices. So in terms of more funding, we're seeing a win in terms of more funding in New Mexico. We're seeing that for family child care specifically, there's retirement plan contributions in California. Healthcare is finally being addressed in DC, and housing protections is at the forefront in several states. So I also just wanted to give space and shed light as to like how's your voices continue to make the difference. And we want to continue to uplift and empower that as well. Next slide, please. So I wanted to kind of pivot and talk more about that, like sharing your stories and your experiences. I wanted to introduce on this panel our wonderful family child care educator and policy fellow, Kenya Reynoso. Unfortunately, Tiffany was unable to join because she's under the weather, but we're sending Tiffany our deepest love and hope for a speedy recovery. So a little bit about Kenya. Oh, okay. So Kenya is has been selected to become our amazing family childcare educator and policy fellow. She comes from Maryland, and she's also here working with NAFCC on our storytelling, and we are Child's Care campaign. So let's give a warm heart and love with Kenya, and we'll just provide space. Next slide, please. We'll provide a little bit of space where Kenya can talk about a little bit about the storytelling project that she and Tiffany are a part of. Here at NAFCC, we often welcome and support our educators who speak different languages. Kenya wants to speak in her native mother tongue, and I support it. She's gonna give her portion in Spanish. So for our interpreters, I believe there was a way that we were going to switch channels so our English speakers would be, and our Mandarin speakers would be able to access the English channel, so we can continue to have this dialogue freely and authentically. If there's I will pause here in case there needs to be an announcement made by the interpreters in order for us to continue to follow the conversation in the most authentic way possible. Is this simply by we're good to go? Is it simply by switching? Awesome.
Awesome.
Okay, so we're good to
Buenas
go.
noches.
Yes, go ahead, Kenya.
Buenas noches, tengo el placer de ser parte de la historia. Digo la historia porque juntas lograremos crear historia. Crearemos esta tan importante labor que es hacernos notar y valer lo que nosotras, nuestra labor tan importante que hacemos. El propósito de este proyecto de narración de historias es ayudar a las partes interesadas y a los miembros de la comunidad a comprender la inmensidad y la importancia crítica del cuidado infantil familiar en el panorama de la educación y el cuidado infantil. A través de este proyecto de narración, queremos resaltar el increíble trabajo de los educadores de cuidado infantil, del cual tengo el honor de ser parte, para nosotros crear conciencia. Muchas personas saben lo que nosotros hacemos, muchas personas piensan cuando tienen un bebé, cuando tienen un niño pequeño, oye, yo necesito a alguien que cuide a mi hijo, pero realmente nos dan ese valor, realmente hacen esa diferencia que nosotros figuramos para todas estas familias. Esto es lo que nosotros buscamos a la hora de crear estas historias. Nosotros no queremos que una tercera persona hable de lo que nosotros hacemos. Nosotros necesitamos que nosotros, ya sean hombre o mujer, sea la que cuente esta historia. Es aquí donde se va a crear la diferencia, donde vamos a marcar esta necesidad. Porque vemos que cuando pasó la pandemia, todo el mundo pensaba en que nosotros estábamos ahí. Nadie consideró, hoy, de verdad, estas personas hacen esta labor tan importante. Entonces, esto es lo que buscamos. Nosotros necesitamos crear conciencia. Y por eso necesitamos colectar esta información y hacer sonido donde los que hacen leyes, que están sentados detrás de un escritorio y no saben ni esta labor tan ardua, lo que es educar, lo que es dar amor, lo que es dar cuidado. Todo esto nosotros somos las únicas que podemos dar esto y por eso es que necesitamos este apoyo. Este es el momento de darnos a notar. No mañana, no pasado, es ahora que necesitamos esta información. Necesitamos escuchar de toda la nación lo valerosa que somos, las horas que trabajamos, lo desconsiderado que es el sistema para muchas de nosotras porque no contamos con el mismo rate como bien lo que nosotras para contar esta historia, y eso es lo que necesitamos, que nos apoyen, que nos den su opinión, su voz. No tiene que ser perfecto, no tiene que ser largo, lo que necesitamos es autenticidad, necesitamos que ese espíritu y esa labor que realizamos tan largo sea vista y valorada a través de lo que nos dirigen, por favor. Próximo slide.
Kenya, muchísimas gracias. Ahora vamos a hacer la conversación. So thank you so much, Kenya. So let's go ahead and just let's have a chat. I think the best way to do this, because this is, bear with us, we're experimenting, right? This is pioneer right now. So I'll ask questions in English to see if people need to catch up. And then we'll have the dialogue in Spanish. Does that make sense? ¿Sí? So voy a hacer la pregunta en inglés. Y entonces vamos a dialogar en español si es posible, la más para que nosotros estemos en la misma página, porque esta es la primera vez que estamos haciendo esto así. So everyone here, bear with us. This is authenticity at its very best. So Kenya, what drove you to open up your program and be a family child care educator?
Yo soy madre de 2 hermosos niños. Cuando mi niño, tuve la oportunidad de cuidar a mi niña hasta que tuvo la edad de ya entrar a kindergarten. Cuando mi niño nació, me vi la necesidad de tener que trabajar y empezar a buscar una guardería. Pero todo lo que veía era personas. Esto me llevó a mí a determinar, no, yo quiero algo más, yo quiero algo mejor, yo quiero que él tenga la oportunidad de crecer en el mejor ambiente posible, con salud, con buena educación, con amor. Por eso decidí abrir mi guardería y ha sido la mejor decisión que he tomado en mi vida. Estoy más que feliz y orgullosa.
Qué linda, Kenia. Kenia siempre tiene mi corazón, ¿verdad? So, ahora va a hacer la pregunta otra vez en inglés, pero siempre que habla yo me quedo así como, so what compelled you to be a part of NAFCC's advocacy, and our advocacy efforts and the organization?
Es que cuando tú tienes como una chispa, y yo siento que todos lo tenemos, porque esto no es algo fácil, esto es algo que requiere no solamente amor y pasión, necesita organización, necesita estructura y necesita visualizarte cuando tú quieres algo más. Desde que yo tengo el honor de haber iniciado, tener mi licencia, hacer todo por la regla, yo dije, wow, yo quiero darle a mis niños que están bajo mi cuidado lo mejor de mí, no solamente como madre, sino como educador. Y esto fue creando la necesidad de mí, pero es que yo siento que no es fair, como dicen. O sea, esto no es equitativo, no es igual para todos. Y es por esto que yo empecé, yo dije, es que tiene que haber una forma de que mi voz sea escuchada, porque como se habrán dado cuenta, me encanta hablar. Entonces, y acciono, porque a veces no es solamente hablar, hay que accionar. Entonces yo dije, yo necesito hacer parte del cambio. Y es por esto que empecé, tuve el honor de hacer un programa de 1 año y dije, no, yo quiero dar más, yo quiero lograr más, yo quiero que mi voz y lo que converso con tantas otras proveedoras, tengo el honor de pertenecer a maravillosos grupos y todas tenemos las mismas necesidades. Pero ¿qué pasa? Solamente nos quedamos en eso, en conversarlo. No tomamos acción porque creemos que uno solo no va a hacer el cambio, creemos que nuestras voces no van a ser escuchadas, nos sentimos minorizadas por ser latinas, pero óyeme, no hay mejor labor que la de nosotros. O sea, nosotros, sin nosotros no hay otro trabajo. Todo el mundo necesita un lugar donde dejar sus hijos. Entonces es ahí donde está esa mínima diferencia, que es lo que hace todo. O sea, sin nosotros no hay otra labor. No se puede hacer más nada. No se puede dirigir el mundo, no se puede dirigir el gobierno, no se puede dirigir el condado, no se puede dirigir un hospital, no se puede hacer nada. Entonces, ese detalle, cuando uno logra comprenderlo, es que uno toma acción y se valora, porque para que ellos nos valoren, tenemos que valorarnos nosotros. O sea, no es fácil. Son jornadas muy largas donde damos no solamente amor, no solamente educación, damos comprensión, damos atención. Entonces, cuando tú entiendes ese detalle, es que tú dices, yo voy a hacer algo más. Y eso es lo que me ha llevado a mí a hacer todo lo que estoy haciendo, que siento que es nada, pero voy a seguir dando mi granito de arena cada día más.
Kenia, ¿cómo que nosotros decimos aquí en el field, verdad? We are the workforce behind the workforce. Eso es lo que siempre estamos diciendo. Pues entonces ahí lo está diciendo bien claramente y bien alto. ¿qué cambio quiere ver en el cuidado de hogar y cuidado familiar de hogar y ahora y en el futuro? ¿Qué cambio quiere ver? What changes do you hope to see for child care now and in the future?
Creo que en sentido general, si nos basamos solamente en esas simples leyes que se están trabajando, eso sería lo ideal. O sea, necesitamos un soporte de retiro. Yo tengo 37 años, pero ¿qué va a pasar cuando tenga 50, cuando tenga 60, cuando tenga 70? O sea, necesitamos a nivel de salud. Sé que algunos ya tienen la oportunidad de contar con él, pero en nuestro estado todavía no, o está en pañales, sería la palabra correcta. También necesitamos seguridad. ¿Cuántos de nosotros nos vemos en la necesidad de flexibilizar nuestras reglas porque no queremos perder un padre, no queremos perder una familia, pero es porque no contamos con una seguridad, con un amparo del gobierno? Entonces, eso es lo que nos va a dar a nosotros la fuerza para seguir nuestras reglas, nuestras leyes, nuestras pólizas dentro de nuestras guarderías o nuestro cuidado. Entonces, todo eso, pero sobre todo, una igualdad en el ingreso. O sea, todo el mundo va al supermercado, todo el mundo tiene que comprar la misma comida. No es justo. Yo pago la misma comida aunque esté en este zip code o en another zip code. So, es justo que tengamos el mismo nivel de ingresos o el mismo nivel de soporte. Eso es lo que yo aspiro.
Gracias, Kenya. Gracias. Muchísimas gracias por estar con nosotros en esta noche. Let's give Kenya a nice, warm round of applause. It was just amazing. Thank you so much for giving voice and sharing your experiences. Muchísimas gracias. Y ahora vamos a continuar con el slides. Y si tienen alguna pregunta con Kenya, para Kenya, le vamos a dejar el email de nosotros que al final. So, nosotros estamos en storytelling at NAFCC.org. All right, if we can continue to share our slides. So we talked about the differences that were made every time you guys uplift your stories and share your experiences and also guide us, right? Like this is, I know it might seem like this is important right now, but we cannot get to a certain level if we do not have pay parity. And this is why I love having conversations and love incorporating family child care voices in every step of the way, right? Because that's how we can truly, authentically continue our policy and advocacy work here, at not just on an organization level, but also as a coalition and also on a state and federal level. So please, all this to say, I also wanted to share light as to right now in this present moment in time, organizations that are amplifying your voices. We have the National Women's Law Center that put out a state-by-state map. It's an interactive map that you can hover and see with every state stories that are coming out from the field. We have the National Association for Family Child Care. We are presently in a storytelling campaign. We want to hear from you. We have a questionnaire in English and Spanish, and we'll make it accessible in Mandarin as well, where we want to hear from you. We want to continue to gain insight from the field, and that's up on our website. And we also have our email, storytelling at NAFCC.org. There was recently a survey that was sent out, a fact sheet that was sent out from the National Association for Education of Young Children and Family, NAEYC, and RAPID to really talk about the health of the field. So that's also a tool that you can really hear and see, and this is how we're amplifying, and this is what we're using as tools when we continue our advocacy work. So we are out there really providing voices for you all every step and every chance that we have. Next slide, please. So what can you do today? talked about what we're doing. We talked about the impact that that everything is going on. So as mentioned, complete our educator impact questionnaire on our website. And on the slide, you'll see the link right there. And also email us at storytelling@nafcc.org, whether it's, this is what I'm experiencing right now. I hear that this isn't mentioned. I don't know where this goes. This is my 2 cents. This is what, anything at all. Send it to that email. That's there for us to continue to farm through. Also, that's the email where our policy fellow receive inquiries from you all. So if you all also want to get a hold of Kenya and Tiffany, that's a good way to do so. We have Child Care Aware of America that has their advocacy toolkit that I shed light to, and the CACFP just 2 days ago sent out their toolkit to really continue to uplift and eliminate tiering. So this is not it. This is just, if I had time to put all of the toolkits, it would be just miles long. So this is just the few that are happening and tangible ways that you all can get involved today, if you feel compelled to. But again, your stories, your experiences go really long and far. Next slide, please. So we got through a lot today, but there's still exciting things happening at the organization level here at NAFCC. It feels like we're just getting off of the last year's conference high, which was the well attended. It was excellent. And we have we're promoting this year's conference, our 2024 annual conference. Creating our gateway to thrive is our theme. It's going to be in St. Louis. So please, if you can register, the dates are July 25th to the 27th, with pre-conference being that Wednesday, I believe. So there's that link for the conference. We are already receiving solicitations and inquiries about the conference. So I think this is going to even knock last year's out of the water. And I don't even think that's possible, but that's happening within our organization today. Next slide. And I did mention that we are recording and we'll share this presentation and the webinar itself. And if you want us to send it to you, please go to our website and sign on to our newsletter. Next week, we'll be circulating our policy newsletter, and that this is the resources that will be on there as well. So make sure that we have your information so we can send it your way. And I'm happy that this time around we do have time for Q&A. If you're directing questions to a certain person, just either type it on the chat, or we can go off mute. But just indicate who you want the question to go to, or if it's general, just ask away and we'll respond. So if you have any questions, feel free to add to the chat or the Q&A function. Sorry, I should say that. I see a few hands that are raised. Claudia, do you have a question for us? No? So I'll go to the next hand. Anna? Is there a way that we can have you come off mute? I'm wondering if the functions aren't working. We have Luella, Riley, or Luella. If I see your hands are also raised. So I'm presuming that if you have your hands raised, you have a question. So that's what I'm going off of. If you want to come off mute. And then I see a question on the chat. One issues FCCH are having in Colorado is finding qualified substitutes. Our state licensing requires substitutes to have all the same trainings and requirements as the primary provider. The state says this is federal requirement they have to follow. The rules result in FCCH providers not being able to find qualified. Okay. Substitute, which means we take no time off to take care of ourselves. Or we have to choose, and that's hard. Is this something NAFCC can address on the federal level? Again, so if this is something that we want to continue to monitor, and if this is similar issues that we're seeing across different states, we can continue to monitor and then advocate and create a plan for advocating on that particular issue.
It does sound like a state issue.
Mm-hmm.
But that does not preclude, a nationwide fix, but it does sound like something particular to Colorado. Right. Oh, okay. You're being told that it's tied to the federal CDBG requirements. We can definitely look into that.
And then we have your information, so we'll contact you directly to answer that question as well, to make sure that we follow up with you.
Because it could be the way that the state, manages CDBG on the block grant side, or it could be a federal requirement. We just need to look into that.
Are the toolkits downloadable and are they free? Crystal. The toolkits, the advocacy toolkits is what you're referring to? If that's what you're referring to, then yes. There are tools that you use to continue to elevate your voice on a key issue, but unclear as to what exactly you meant by toolkit. And wondering if there's a way that we can disable the mute function so people can be able to share their questions off mute, if that's an option as well for our moderators on this call. Are there any other questions? I'm just trying to parcel through.
For Whitney, there's a question where it says, when you say the $16 billion was left out of the supplemental, could you please clarify the upcoming milestone dates? Is February 2nd the next chance it could come up or go through? Whitney, do you want to respond?
No, you're the one that went over the deadlines. I would love you to respond, Letty, please.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really good question. The kind of question that we want you guys to be thinking about. What are the upcoming milestones? For the 16 billion, there's no path with specific dates, but I think we have to monitor very closely between the beginning of the year, and I would say up to May. February 2nd, the current funding resolution ends for 8 federal departments. It could be, that Congress decides to add childcare funding to a deal that ends the fiscal year 24, and they pass their bills. It could be. You could have that, what we call in our business, the end game. You could have billions of dollars for childcare added. I will say it is unlikely. We have heard that there is federal disaster funding that will expire, that FEMA, the entity that deals with natural disasters, will run out of money, and that when that happens, that will be a good touch point for the Congress to move on domestic priorities like the child care funding. Whitney and I are trying to find out when that money expires, when they run out of money, because that will be a very good, we need that information to know exactly when to work backwards and plan our advocacy plan with that date. We don't know yet. We were told by congressional staff that will be the major endpoint. At the same time, our champions are gunning for that end game when all the appropriations process comes together, either in the bills or in a long year continuing resolution, which is a possibility, meaning that the Congress does not tackle independent bills, but just passes a law that says current funding levels apply till September 30, 2024. Either one or that, but either one or the other will apply to an opportunity for childcare. But we think that the FEMA funding touch point will be probably better off for us. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you, Letty. We have a where are we on student loan forgiveness for child care providers on the federal level? Do you want to take that on?
I'm not aware of anything too specific for childcare providers. I know there are proposals out there, but I don't think there's anything that will be across the finish line and be implemented.
But I would definitely agree with Letty, and that's just another thing that you should be raising, because the proposals are out there. They just need the support. And so it's really important that you explain to your policymakers why that's really important, so those proposals move forward. Because when Letty says something isn't moving, it's because they don't think it's viable. And that really relies on there to be, as Letty said earlier, that outside pressure to make it a priority, because that's absolutely crucial, obviously, that student loan forgiveness be extended to all early educators, no matter what the setting. But they need to hear louder from you all that it's a priority.
Thank you. If we have time for another question, I just want to make sure I'm getting everyone's questions in the chat. And if you want to ask, if you're feeling brave and want to come off mute, you have to unmute yourself, and you can go ahead and ask your question. But if nothing else, please feel free to contact me. Raise hand. Yes, raise hand first. Raise your hands first if you want to come off, and then we can have you come off mute. Oh, we have Claudia. Claudia Cuesta. Do you have a question for us? We invite you to come off mute. Okay, we have Trina. I see your hands are up. We also invite you to come off mute if you want to share your question.
I do have a question. Do we know where we are with the federal proposed rules, where we are in the process?
You're talking about the HHS proposed rules that came out in July. I believe that the Department of HHS received many comments on it, and they're working to finalize the rule. I've heard spring. I'm not sure if it's like early, mid, or late spring. But HHS will publish its final rule sometime in the spring.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, and again, so I'll put, if we can put up the slide in the very beginning, where it's my face. There's a QR code. That's my contact information. Please feel free to contact me. And we will wrap up this webinar. Thank you all. There is a poll that we would love, a very quick poll that we would love for you all to participate in. There is my face and there's the QR code. So please feel free. Thank you all for joining and participating. Again, this feedback is really necessary for us to continue to improve. And have a good night. Thank you.
Night.
And for those of you, I'll send an email if you have any other questions. Please email us at NAFCC@nafcc.org or myself in the QR code, and I will get to all of your questions.